Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bounds. Well, it's been a while since we've been in recommending mode on this programme, so on today's show we're celebrating the start of spring with a slew of top-tier suggestions for the albums, books and exhibitions that you should have on your radar as we emerge from being a winter caterpillar into a spring butterfly. The days get longer, the sunshine warmer and the prospect of a summer holiday just at the ends of our fingertips. Beach reads, though, that'll be on a different show. Here with their wit and wisdom are John Mitchinson, co-founder of Boundless and co-host of the Backlisted podcast, the broadcaster and DJ Georgie Rogers, and Ossian Ward, who's head of content at the Listen Gallery. Welcome all to the programme. We're going to dive straight in, Georgie, with music. Should we get a taster before we hear your take on it? Get into the show with a bit of falsetto.
Yeah.
Right? Now this, I wouldn't have guessed who it was from hearing that, but I've obviously got the script in front of me. To whom were we listening there, Georgie?
That is Bon Iver. So it's his first new album in 6 years, fifth studio album ever, which, considering he started in 2006, he's not the most prolific artist, but, you know, it's all considered. We were first teased with the return of this record with the Sable EP, which was 3 tracks last year, very much in the classic Bon Iver camp, kind of sombre, melancholy, a gorgeous wallow. And
a sad campfire.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And I watched an interview clip with Justin Vernon, and he was speaking around this album about how for a good 10 years after his huge rise to fame, he felt like he had a boot on the chest. You know, he was overworked and overrun with anxiety. And so this record is kind of his most personal. It's a record for him. The Sable tracks which form the album is the sad Bon Iver, echoing his former self in the darkness with the windows down. And then the Fable tracks, they kind of look to the future, filled with light, love and connection. He's talking about things that he thought he would have achieved by his early 40s, like settling down and meeting someone, having children. And he said it's been 6 months since the boot on the chest feeling. So he's obviously come out of this period of time, and it seems almost like this is his path to self-love record. And it's very soul-bearing, and there's less of the vocal trickery of 22 A Million and some of his previous work. It's very kind of raw, direct from Justin Vernon, and relatable stuff. And yeah,
it's got quite a sort of loungy feel to that clip that we heard. It's got kind of, if the boot is off his chest, then maybe it's wearing a Cuban heel.
Yes,
maybe it's a suede Chelsea boot, and it's just brushing the cuff of a velvet trouser.
I love that idea.
I kind of think, I mean, there's a bit of Father, I mean, he would hate maybe for us to say this, but there's a bit of Father John Misty in that vibe as well, right? There's some very kind of arch 70s loveliness about it.
Yeah, and I think the track that we heard is Everything is Peaceful Love is definitely like one of the most kind of joyous tracks on the record. And he said that that's sort of the essence of this album, you know, the idea that happiness and joy are the highest form and the true buoyancy of survival, and even taking yourself less seriously could heal the world. So there's a lovely video with it of just kind of silly things, silly pets and silly people and silly objects smiling.
It's lovely stuff. Bon Iver's Sable Fable is the new album. That is out on the 11th of April, beautifully brought to life by Georgie Rogers. Georgie, thank you very much indeed. Ossian, it's art time, but we're all out of focus. Yep. Why and where?
Well, if you've ever been to Monet's Orangerie in Paris, they're putting on a really interesting exhibition. So obviously his 3 epic panels are there, but they've centred this exhibition out of focus, another vision of art, on art that you can't see properly because it's a bit blurry. Might be good for your eyes and your lack of reading of the script there,
thanks,
Rob.
Ossian, yeah.
Because it's basically work that is either blurred or out of focus or somehow fuzzy, which, I don't know, it's such a lofty idea for an exhibition. It could only be in France. So this is in Paris. And it does relate back to the history of art in some ways, this idea of sfumato, which was a kind of hazy way of painting in the Renaissance, a kind of like a Raphael dustiness. Then it went into Impressionism, which was obviously everything was a bit blurry. And then we go on to the German artists such as Richter, Thomas Ruff, who painted or made photographs blurry. And
I see also Sugimoto is on the list.
Yeah,
which seems very happily in the zone.
I think so. And I like the idea of sort of like when there's nothing to look at, where do you go in a picture? So there is a spirituality to some of these works, to Sugimoto, and to the idea of just not having a focal point. So I think it's a really interesting idea for a show. I have no idea if it will carry it off, but I wanted to double it up. And there's another exhibition in Caen, in north of France, around the same time, which is called The Never-Ending Horizon, From the Renaissance to Digital Arts. And this is like the opposite. So the thing about Monet's water lilies is there's a lack of horizon line. They're just almost reflection, or you can't really tell where you are. So the idea of focusing an exhibition on the horizon line is also a really interesting kind of lofty example of what you could do with a show. And this goes also from the Renaissance, like the idea of the perspective and drawing lines to the horizon, all the way up through Romanticism, where you have the kind of the lone figure, the Rücken figure, staring out across.
A Caspar David Friedrich.
Friedrich. Yeah. I don't know if he's in this show. That would be a bit of an omission if he isn't. But so you've got this kind of stable, fixed point of reference, which they also mess around with in the show, with a kind of abstract horizon lines, Mondrian's lines kind of flowing out into the ether. So two kind of interesting things about looking at art.
I love that. They're such brilliant ideas because they're kind of so simple, right? Should we say that we've got a tour de force and a tour d'horizon? Are we allowed to say that? John's scoffing, and that means it's good.
Touché.
Ossian, thank you very much. Talking of John, we're going to have his first choice, which is from a friend of Monocle, really, Dan Richards.
The last book of Dan's a few years ago, Outpost, where he visited very, very remote places all over the world. This book is about nighttime. It's about dark. It's called Overnight Journeys, Conversations and Stories After Dark. I think a brilliant idea for a book because, let's be honest, half our lives take place there. Most of us don't spend other than kind of staying up all night for parties, most of us don't spend a lot of time working, but there are people who do. And the kind of lovely kaleidoscopic structure of this book is he goes and talks to those people. He goes to the Dusty Knuckle in a bakery in Dalston. He goes on a ferry across to Shetland, a night ferry across to Shetland. He goes on the night train, the famous, made immortalised by W.H. Auden and Benjamin Britten in the 40s, but he goes on the modern version of that. He goes to Le Mans, where they have the 24-hour race. And then he kind of mines his own experiences from early childhood of reading books about nighttime. The Tiger Who Came to Tea is a famous one, where they have to go out. The tiger eats all the food and they have to go out and eat outside. It's kind of, for a whole generation of people, that book strikes a chord. And then also, brilliantly, one of my favourite bits of the book, he talks about Moominland Midwinter, which is the dark kind of, the dark Moominland book, when Tove Jansson's had enough of entertaining kids with the lovely, cheerful Moomins. She takes a really kind of dark story where the Moomin wakes up in the middle of the night and everybody is asleep and he can't wake everybody and he's on his own in this sort of crepuscular, terrifying landscape. Dan goes and talks to people who are experts in bats. He does very movingly talk about his own experience of COVID and a kind of another kind of sort of nighttime experience, being looked after by people when you're only semi-conscious. He was very, very nearly died of COVID, of the people who work all night on shifts in hospitals. It's a very, very entertaining and I think ultimately very wise book, and he gets to a level, I think, of kind of complexity towards the end, which I love. He's just brilliant at getting people to tell him stuff. I mean, if you're a bloke, you learn a lot of stuff about helicopters, quite a lot about trains, quite a lot about ferries. If you're the kind of person who loves engineering, he's very good on the detail of all that. But he's also good just on the human quality of nighttime and how it transforms everything, transforms the way we see the world and think about the world. You know, he talks very openly about the post-COVID, about night terrors and so on. It's both charming, but it has real intellectual depth to it as well.
And by and large, are people sort of philosophical about the lot of working at night? Do they feel that it gives them a different take on their daytime experience, which I suppose is often led with eyes shut. But
yeah, I think one of the things is almost all the people who do this work do something that they feel is contributing great positive kind of quality. You know, of a nurse saving people's lives. If you're a crane operator, there's an amazing crane operator kind of filling up sort of rail freight and sea freight at the beginning of the book. They know that their jobs are very, very technical and skilled and important, so that it kind of seems to outbalance the strangeness of the hours. It's that sort of strange thing. All of these stories are kind of linked by the fact that they take place at this, you know, in this 8 hours where most of us are asleep, or at least trying to be asleep.
And again, in every respect to Dan for this, it is a wonderfully simple idea by which we learn about how the other half live.
Yeah,
right?
and could easily have become kind of, you know, pedestrian. He's his great gift. Obviously, you know, he, as you say, is a friend of the show. Dan is so personable, so good at getting people to talk. And, you know, the stories, there's a wonderful chapter in the middle of the book where he hasn't had any kids himself, so he talks to lots of parents about their experience of getting up with their babies in the middle of the night, which for a lot of people is nighttime is
very real.
That's a very real thing. So it's a delightful book and just out from Canongate.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That is Dan Richards' Overnight. Thank you, John. Georgie, back to music time. Should we dive straight in?
How dare you? I was shutting down the world and it scared you. Can't hold a girl down that's this bad. She ain't nice on my nose and my hair, dude. Not the type that would trip off nostalgia. Too nice, but my silence is louder.
As I walk this wicked town, keeping me awake on the devil's palm. I am the light.
That is a little bit of Little Simz.
Indeed, yeah.
Sounds great, as ever. Give us a little entry point into Little Simz and what she's doing with this new LP.
Yeah, so this is Little Simz' 6th studio album, Lotus, and we were meant to be getting it on May the 9th on AWOL Recordings, but due to acting commitments, it's going to be put back to June the 6th. She has delved into acting in more recent years. She was in Top Boy on Netflix, which was, you know, a hugely watched series. And she's been doing some more acting, so the music at this point is going to be put back a few weeks. She shared 2 tracks from this project so far. One is called Free and one is what you just heard, which is Flood, featuring 2 brilliant artists, Obonjaya and Moonchild Sonelli. Free is a kind of exploration of love and fear with some incredible Simz-esque poetry, observational lyrics, which she's so good for, beautiful strings, a sun-drenched chorus. There's kind of her saying, I think fear can be exposed in abundance of wealth and then creeps in when you're not loving yourself. I think we fear all the answers so we don't ask the questions. Just kind of like really brilliant bits of flow. And Flood, that one is the opposite. It's more urgent and direct and kind of tribal and defiant, a bit angry at the world. How dare you? I was shutting down a world and it scared you, and kind of, you know, that sort of energy to the track. And this new album, Lotus, it's, as the title reflects, is about renewal and growth. The lotus flower is a symbol of purity and resilience, thrives in muddy waters. And I think maybe this kind of ties into her making a statement about the next phase of her music. On these tracks that we've heard, they've been guided by producer Miles Clinton James, who we don't know too much about. But it's interesting to talk here about what happened in January. I don't know if you saw the news, but Inflow produced Little Simz since her 3rd album, Grey Area, and those are the records that really have put her on a map globally and as this artist that everyone now knows. And Dean Cover is also a member of the band Salt.
So good.
Yeah.
Such imagination to that group.
Yeah.
Whoever is in it and however many members they have, it's a mystery, but yeah.
Yeah. So for this part of this chapter, they've really been, you know, creative partners. And news broke in January that Little Simz filed a claim suing him over unpaid debts, alleging that Dean Cover failed to repay a loan of $1.7 million from 2023. And that includes $1 million to cover Salt's live show, which was their only live show. It was at Drum Sheds in December 2023. And it was all-out production. Everyone was talking about it in music. And Simz has claimed that the debt left her unable to pay her full tax liability in January last year. But I think it's important to say Little Simz' talent transcends
She's George
producers.
Harrison, she'd write a song about it. Fortunately not.
Yeah. Her talent transcends producers, and I think that's what is showing on this new music. It's definitely the next step in her journey and another step up, I believe. Yeah, it's a change. And if the lotus symbolises overcoming adversity, yes, maybe she's got millions in the bank at this point because her music is so, has gone so big. But at the same time, legal affairs like that are never nice, are they?
It's always good to be right.
Yes.
It's Lotus, and it's now out on the 6th of June and in his Little Simz 6th album. Thank you very much, Georgie. Ossian, back to you. We're going to God's own county, West Sussex, for the Goodwood Art Foundation reopening.
Yeah, well, so I'm not that familiar with the kind of Goodwood Festival of Speed and all the other things they do there, but I was once upon a time
That's just a big party at my house.
I was going to say, I know you've been, Rob, you and cars, but the idea of the Goodwood Foundation is based upon what was a sculpture park before, the Cass.
This is the Cass, yeah.
Foundation.
It's really good, yeah.
Yeah, and he's the guy, the Cass, the art supplies shops, and had this sculpture park out there. This is not that because, in a way, Cass is not involved. It's a reinvention. So they're using the same site, and there will be outdoor sculpture, but it's based around Goodwood as a foundation. They've built a new pavilion or updated this old pavilion that looks very beautiful, and they're having exhibitions both indoors and outdoors. I think the main highlight is a Rachel Whiteread exhibition. You'll know her as the casting the underside of chairs or the empty space.
So good. I mean, she's one of the greats.
Yeah, and I think she's got a brand new piece, a big concrete work that's being debuted alongside photographs, which I don't think she's really ever showed before. It's all curated by Anne Gallagher, who's ex-Tate, who did a massive survey of Rachel Whiteread there. So that's going to be indoors and outdoors. Then they've got some works such as Helio Oiticica, Brazilian artist of the 70s, 80s, with a pavilion, a kind of multi-coloured, bright, labyrinthine outdoor pavilion, sort of based around the idea of walking through the favela or the colours of Brazil. That will be really exciting. Again, the curator is very well versed in his work. She curated a big show of him at Tate. Other artists, including Isamu Noguchi, who you'll know from other sculpture parks, who has his own sculpture foundation in New York. So there's definitely a feel that the sculpture's still there, the outdoor element is still there, but it's a kind of brand new foundation based upon the idea of Goodwood having had some connection to art throughout the centuries.
And Westdean College is down there, which is kind of its crafty kind of sister institute, I suppose, which is super, super good. It's another great reason to visit Goodwood.
Yeah.
Ossian is what it is. I'm intrigued to see Rachel Whiteread's photography, actually, because obviously it's a pretty sculpture-heavy kind of place. Okay, so it is brackets opening, and that's the Rachel Whiteread show at the Goodwood Art Foundation opens on the 31st of May. Thank you very much. John, back to you, and something new from Katie Kitamura.
Yes. I think Katie Kitamura's 2021 book, Intimacies, is the one that really kind of propelled her into the front rank contemporary American writers. She's just about to publish Audition, which I think is even better. I have to say, this book kind of got under my skin. It's very audacious premise. The first half of the book, unknown narrator meets a young man. She's I guess, a middle-aged woman, actress, meets a young man in a restaurant. It's an awkward encounter, and he says, "I think you're my mother." She says, "That's impossible. I've never had a child." He said, "But you talked about giving a child away earlier." It turns out that she'd had an abortion. Very awkward scene. Her husband unexpectedly comes into the restaurant. You're not quite sure whether the husband has seen them or not. But the first half of the book is her kind of trying to deal with the strangeness of this young man who she feels compelled to meet and to talk to and is attracted to. Turns out that he wants her for a mother. It creates problems in the relationship, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is a brilliant, beautifully etched portrait of a New York marriage. And then she does something so clever. The second half of the book, she replays the whole book where Xavier, the young man, is her son. And it's about her relationship and the relationship of her husband with her and with the son. She's an actress. The play that she was rehearsing that wasn't going terribly well in the first half of the book has become the play that everybody wants to go and see. She's been feted all over the world for the subtlety of her performance. So you have this extraordinary distorting mirrored structure. The whole book in the end, I think, really is about what is performance? You know, we're living in a performative culture. We're surrounded by images of people on social media trying to live their best lives and be their best selves. It's so well done, and it's so right to the last page. You're not quite sure which way this book is going to go. There's a brilliant blow up at the end of the second half of the book. But at the end of it, the book, what you're left with is a feeling of we're all performing. We're all performing, and in the end, the idea that there is authenticity, it's not that book. It's saying, in the end, the performance is the thing that counts. The performance is the reality.
Katie Kitamura is super. And this sounds like the most conceptual thing
Yeah.
she's done by far. And I love this idea of playing with notions of history and performative culture, as you say, and wishful thinking, I suppose, as well. It sounds exceptional.
I think that the thing that she does is she manages to take what might be a kind of slightly annoyingly focused little bit of very privileged, as I say, New York life, and turns it into a genuinely philosophical novel. You know, to get this degree of both the combination of brilliant writing and deep philosophical kind of inquiry, you know, you're looking at really some of the greatest writers of the 20th century have taken that on and not done it.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Philip Roth or Virginia Woolf. I mean, I think I kept thinking that that she's almost got that ability to deliver in a sentence or in a paragraph, that ability to completely change your thinking about a character. It's, you know, it's, if you're interested in what can fiction still do that nothing else can do, this book is a great example. Audition by Katie Kitamura.
That's the cover quote sorted, John. Beautifully put. Thank you very much. And next up, Georgie, it's your final music choice. Again, let's have a bit of it. Tom York, buddying up, making some new friends. Who's the newest friend?
The newest friend is Mark Pritchard, who has been in music for a long time. He's a renowned electronic musician signed to Warp Records, which this is coming out on. Set up the record label Evolution in 1991 with Tom Middleton, another name electronic music fans will know. They worked under monikers Jedi Knights, Global Communication, Link, Reload, and an exhausting list of aliases until 2013 when he just went... Okay,
Not exhaustive, I noticed you said.
Yeah.
Just get over it.
Yeah. When he just finally said, it's Mark Pritchard.
Yeah.
And in 2011, Mark remixed Radiohead's Bloom. And then the first time they collaborated, and yes, it is Tom York, if you hadn't noticed, Tom York of Radiohead and the Smile fame. And the first time they collaborated was on Beautiful People, which appeared on Mark Pritchard's Under the Sun solo album in 2016.
Oh, I love that album.
Beautiful track. And so now they've made a whole album together. And it came about after Mark sent over a large file of MP3s of ideas during lockdown and COVID pandemic. And Tom said, there were so many great ones I knew straight away that I had to drop what I was doing. It felt very much that I had not been anywhere like this before, both as soon as I put my headphones on and started to try find the vocals, words and sounds. And he's really happy with the project and really glad that it's going to see the light of day. But I think that's Tom York's genius, really. It's finding the vocals and the sounds and the melodies that really hit you in the feels, and not just in his lyrics, but the way he uses his voice like another instrument. And in that track, The Conversation Is Missing Your Voice. It's kind of that bleepy, bloopy electronica that's so rich with melody, and Tom's harmonies, they could almost be another synth in the mix. But you can imagine them kind of, just getting really into the nitty-gritty, mining the vaults of, proper analog synthesizer sounds that Mark brings to the table, and then Tom just kind of going wild on it.
It's I mean, you've sort of all these pseudonyms that Mark Pritchard's had over the years, and then and Tom York seems to be the arch collaborator at the moment with different bands and groups and guesting and all the rest of it. There are obviously two people that, despite not being young, are really at the top of their game, and they're very, very interested in, here's a project where I can do this, here's a project I can do that with, right? Other than Damon Albarn, it's kind of like,
yes,
they're there.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of go into this with an open mind, because I think I'm probably very biased because I absolutely love Radiohead. I love Tom York. I love all his solo stuff. I love The Smile. And I wanted to just, go, but it sounds really good. And there's a track on there that's called The Men Who Dance in Stags' Heads. And he kind of sings in a much lower register. Almost at the beginning, I was like, hang on, wait, what vocal is this Mark singing? And then I realised, no, it was Tom. And it's so stunning and haunting. There's 13 tracks. I've only heard the album sampler at this point, but I love the fact that he's always exploring, experimenting, always seeking. And I think he's right. I think we are going to hear him in a slightly different light on this record.
I like that. It sounds like it's got a folk horror vibe to it. The Men Who Dance in Stags' Heads.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, John's in as well. That is called Tall Tales, and it is from Tom York and Mark Pritchard, and it is out on the 9th of May on the previously discussed Warp Records. Georgie, thank you for all your musical choices. Ossian, one last one from you. We're going to Finland for the biennial.
Well, you know me, half Finnish, any
Yeah.
excuse. But it's a youngish biennial. Biennial's a bit to a penny, you might think. But this one's really interesting. Finland, obviously made up of thousands of islands. It's basically all islands. So the main show is on an island called Vallisaari, like an ex-military island, but actually now just uninhabited. There are other locations in Central. There's a museum, and also the kind of Esplanade, the main drag through Helsinki, will have some work on it. But ironically, for the show is called Shelter, Below and Beyond Becoming and Belonging. Shelter being the theme. There isn't really much shelter on the island. It's quite wild, it's quite rocky. It's just like going for a beautiful hour-long brisk walk in the countryside. But you'll find works and sculptures all over. Some of the ones that I like the sound of is a Finnish group called Band of Weeds, who have found electromagnetic pulses in plant tissue and turned it into sound waves. Nice. So the idea of shelter is not so much to do with a covering or a cavern. It's more about the idea of looking after these ecosystems, preserving, as this island has been preserved as a kind of nature reserve. So it's more about this non-human world, or the more than human world, if you use that terminology. So, plants, animals, fungi. It's kind of very on trend for art exhibitions, but it sounds like a good list of artists because it also includes artists like Tue Greenfort, a Danish artist. He's making these jellyfish out of blown glass, which sound very beautiful. Artist I work with, Otobong Nakanga, big tapestry, a kind of underwater scene. Giuseppe Pennoni, a big tree. There's one going up outside the Serpentine. So there's a lot of kind of nature meets art, but should feel like a wild walk rather than a kind of very manicured experience. If that makes sense.
Sounds wonderful, and hats off to the curators for this. It sounds like a proper. It sounds very far from To a Penny as biennials go. It sounds like fascinating.
I don't know if it ends in a sauna or a sauna, but it should do, really.
Well, it's all back to yours, isn't it?
Yeah, fine.
Thanks.
I went to a sauna in Helsinki and then jumped in the Baltic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Done
that's what
it.
you need to do.
I did that for
That's
New
it.
Year's. It's a good sober-upper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, we went to a heavy metal sauna there as well. I did a whole sauna thing. But yeah, Finland's amazing.
We're so finished. My brother has a sauna in Sydenham in his back garden. So you don't have to go all the way there for the sauna. Go for the art.
Yes.
Other things available.
Thank you, Ossian. That is the Helsinki Biennial, and that is running from the 8th of June until the 21st of September. Thanks for your art choices, of course. John, your final choice, Jay Griffiths.
Jay Griffiths is, I think, one of the best writers at work today. She ought to be better known. She wrote nearly 20 years ago an absolutely seminal book called Wild, An Elemental Journey, where she travelled all over the world trying to get to the bottom of the concept of wild and wildness. And this book, her latest, How Animals Heal Us, is kind of in that tradition. Again, it's a book full of observation, it's full of science, it's full of looking at the role of animals in human, not just in human. We know, I think most of us have got kind of anecdotal stories about dogs that can smell cancer. They're in this book. Also, credible dogs that were able to smell COVID and are used in this. I mean, it's not just a kind of a hippie thing. These are real, demonstrable. And also animals used for therapy. The book's sort of in 4 bits. So it's animals healing the psyche, animals healing the body, animals helping us rethink human society as well. There's all kinds of not just honeybees, famously, but also wolves have got incredibly complex ways of sort of managing the environment. Red deer, it turns out, have referenda about where they're going to go and eat. There's a whole level of understanding, connection with the natural world. The thing about Jay's books is that it's her writing. The writing is, she is as good as Robert Macfarlane in my view. I mean, in making you see the connections between the whole of this book is about. It's really a kind of, I suppose, it's a panegyric to life. The fact that everything is connected, and the animals. We all have got those extraordinary stories about animals who wait for us before they know that they seem to know when we're coming home. There's some brilliant stories of animals saving human lives. There's a parrot who alerts the woman in the house that the child is choking by saying, "Mama come, mama come." All of those little anecdotes, but brilliantly put into scientific context, and then brought together, really, I think, with myth. She travels all over the world, so there's a huge amount of understanding of indigenous cultures, who I think are in general better at this. There's the final section of the book, I suppose, is about animals and spirituality, and particularly in shamanism, and how we need to learn from animals. We've used them as kind of as food and as fodder for so long, and actually most of us who've got a pet, or who've had any time sort of sitting out listening to birds singing, know that animals heal us whether we want them to or not. That's what they're doing all the time. It's sort of beautifully done. She writes so well. But this is a bit of a Ron Seal title, which is not what you expect from Jay. How Animals Heal Us, Jay Griffiths. And it's out in June.
Beautifully recommended. How Animals Heal Us is out on the 5th of June, as John says, and that's published by Hamish Hamilton. Thanks, everybody, for your wonderful choices. I want to go everywhere, read everything and listen to everything. It's been absolutely splendid. Thank you. A quick recap then. We recommend you listen to Bon Iver's Sable Fable, Little Simz' Lotus, and Tom York and Mark Pritchard's Tall Tales. Pick up a copy of Dan Richards' Overnight, Katie Kitamura's Audition, and Jay Griffiths' How Animals Heal Us. Finally, our top picks for exhibitions are Out of Focus, another version of Art 1945. That's in Paris, then heading to Spain, as well as The Never-Ending Horizon, and that is in Caen. In Sussex, the Goodwood Art Foundation reopens in May, and slightly further afield, the Helsinki Biennial kicks off in June. Thank you this week to my guests, Georgie Rogers, John Mitchinson and Ossian Ward. And Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. Thank you to Francesca Gilks for research with this episode. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thank you for tuning in.